Everybody, welcome to this presentation on the management of seedbed pests and diseases in tobacco production. This is the outline of my presentation. I'm going to talk about the major insect pests and diseases and the management options that are available. As a very introduction, I'm going to say that tobacco is a major cash crop to Zimbabwe. And under the tobacco value chain transformation strategy, the country aims to produce 300 million kilograms of tobacco annually from the year 2025. And this should enable us to realize a $5 billion tobacco industry. To achieve this, it is important to reduce yield losses attributed to pests and diseases, abiotic factors, and input costs. As we prepare for the upcoming season, we need to be aware of the major seedbed pests and diseases that affect tobacco and how to manage them. The major seedbed pests include aphids and whiteflies, and both aphids and whiteflies are sap-sucking insects that feed on the tender tissues of the seedling. And as they feed, they inject toxic saliva into the seedling and cause it to die. In addition, both aphids and whiteflies secrete honeydew, and this is a sugary substance which attracts ants onto the seedlings. And as the ants feed on the honeydew, they chase away natural enemies to the aphids. The aphids are also efficient vectors of PVY and the bushy top viruses. And PVY is one of the most economically important diseases of tobacco. The whiteflies transmit tobacco leaf curl virus, which again is a potentially harmful disease to tobacco production. Another group of important insect pests in tobacco seedbed production are the fungus gnats. These are small mosquito-like insects whose females feed on the seedlings, especially in the float trays, by attacking the root system and causing poor root growth and ultimately poor uptake of nutrients by the plant, leading to the plant turning yellow and the seedlings dying. In the conventional seedbed, there are cutworms, and these tend to cut the seedlings just above the soil line, and therefore there's a reduction in the population of the seedlings. Another important pest are the leaf miners. The larvae of leaf miners tend to eat the mesophyll layer of the leaves, causing an unsightly appearance on the leaf. This reduces seedling growth and also contributes to seedling mortality. Another general group of insects that feed on seedlings are the leaf eaters. Here we have the tobacco budworm, semiloopers, and laceworms. These basically eat the leaves of the seedling and therefore contribute to seedling mortality. The major diseases in the seedbed include pythium root rot, which is a problem in the float tray system. This usually sets in from the 5th week after sowing, and it tends to cause seedlings to turn yellow, to wilt, and ultimately for the seedlings to die, because the root system is the one which is attacked, and therefore the plant is not able to take up water and nutrients. Also, a problem in the float tray system is damping off. This tends to set in earlier than Pythium root rot and is characterized by water-soaked lesions on the stem base that rapidly become brown and sunken as the disease develops. Ultimately, those lesions also coalesce and cause the seedling to collapse and die. Soshin is also another important disease in the seedlings, and the symptoms, you also see them on the root system, on the base of the stem, where you get some lesions that are also sunken, and over time, and if uncontrolled, they also cause the seedlings to die. Another condition that you tend to find in seedlings is algal growth, where if your float trays are not properly set in the float bed system, the presence of light encourages the growth of algae on the surface of the water and also on the surface of the media. And this interferes with water uptake and nutrient uptake as well. So ultimately, the seedling also suffers and dies. Another seedbed disease that you find is angular leaf spot. This one is mainly a problem in the conventional system, where you start off with irregular brown lesions that coalesce or enlarge and form large areas of dead tissues. And ultimately, again, the seedlings die. The problem with this disease is that you can actually transfer the infected seedlings into the field, and this will cause larger mortality in the field. So how do we manage pests and diseases in the seedbed? So to effectively manage pests and diseases in the seedbed, we need to adopt what we call integrated pest management. In integrated pest management, we use several principles and practices at the same time to deal with a given problem. For example, we can integrate chemical control with resistant varieties, with cultural practices, with biological control, and legislative control. So effective control of seedbed diseases and pests starts with how you set up your seedbed. As shown on this slide, you need a facility that is fenced. This will reduce the traffic of unwanted visitors to the nursery site. You need a clean water source because some of the pathogens, some of the pests will be transmitted through dirty water. You need a foot bath so that people go in to the nursery, disinfect their feet. You need your site to be fenced. And of course, you need to wash your hands as you move into the site and out of the site. You also need to be handling your trays well. For example, your float trays must be cleaned and sterilized, because if they are not cleaned and sterilized, they will harbor pests and diseases. We have seen that pathogens and even insect pests tend to congregate at the bottom of trays. So you need to clean those trays, you need to sterilize those trays to deal with those pathogens and pests. And in terms of handling of float trays, cleaning, you need to do visible removal of any debris, any dirt, any organic matter that is on the trays, disinfect them in jig, rinse them thoroughly after disinfection, dry them, and store them at a place that is safe. And before using them, you also need to regularly check on whether they are still okay. So if you are going to use jig to disinfect your trays, the jig is usually effective for a maximum of 4 weeks. And there are several methods of sterilizing trays. In Zimbabwe, we normally use steaming and hot water dipping. But it has been found that hot water dipping is less effective than steaming. In terms of legislative control, for the seedbed, no sowing of seeds should be done before the 1st of June. No planting of tobacco crops should be done before the 1st of September. And all seedbeds should be destroyed by the 31st of December every year. Failure to comply with this legislation is an offense. Tobacco stocks must be destroyed in the field if you are to control pests and diseases in the seedbed. If you don't destroy stocks, we are creating habitats for insect pests and pathogens to then be able to infect our crops. For chemical control, as Kutsaga, we have registered many chemicals, many fungicides, many insecticides, many bactericides for the management of the disease that I talked about earlier on. And every year, every quarter, we produce a deer grower that gives growers a list of products that are registered for use in tobacco at that particular season. And we also recommend that growers should not use any unregistered products, any banned products. We also recommend that you only use the recommended rates. This is to help us manage resistance in the seed as well. So it's a summary of integrated pest management. You need to apply chemicals only when necessary, and those chemicals must be TRB approved. You need to grow tobacco varieties with resistance to the different diseases that we have. And as Kutsaga, we have about 8 diseases that have been bred for resistance to. You need to time your sowing, no sowing before the set dates. We also need to use biological control agents. There are a number of products that we have approved for use to control both insects and pests, including our Kutsaga T77, which is a very effective biological fungicide. We need to practice cultural practices. For example, those farmers who are into conventional seedbed production, they can rotate their production sites. And ultimately, we need to observe legislated sowing dates with regards to when you can sow when you can start to raise your seedbed. In conclusion, for effective management of pests and disease in the seedbed, we encourage that there be regular scouting of the seedbed, that you practice integrated pest management, and you adhere to legislated dates with regards to sowing and destruction of seedbeds. Thank you very much.